In times of uncertainty, the mind has a tendency to scan for danger. It instinctively gravitates toward worst-case scenarios, fueled by what-ifs and a desperate search for control over things that lie far outside our reach. This is part of our biology. The human brain is wired for survival, not serenity. So when a situation arises that feels chaotic, overwhelming, or threatening, the default reaction is fear. But fear doesn't help us move forward. It paralyzes. It makes the situation feel bigger than it is. The key to staying calm is not found in denying the reality of the moment or pretending everything is fine. It's in choosing where to place our focus. We must learn to start with what we can control, not what we fear. The most effective people in high-stress situations are not those who have more resources, but those who have better clarity. And clarity doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes from asking better questions. Instead of what if this fails, or why is this happening to me, the better question is, what can I do right now with what I have? This repositions the mind from helplessness to agency. It places you back in the driver's seat, not over the situation, but over your response. And that distinction makes all the difference. You can't control the weather, but you can choose to carry an umbrella. You can't predict the economy, but you can adjust your spending. You can't prevent every conflict, but you can choose how you show up in the middle of it. When we fixate on what we fear, our energy is drained into hypotheticals. But when we focus on what we can influence, we engage the part of ourselves that is resourceful, grounded, and capable. One of the most practical things you can do in any stressful moment is to get back to the basics. Breathe intentionally. Count to 4 as you inhale, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and pause for 4. This simple practice of breathwork sends a signal to the brain that you are safe, and it shifts your body out of fight or flight mode. It's hard to think clearly when your nervous system is on fire. But when you slow your breathing, you slow your thinking, and that gives you space to make a better decision. Another foundational move is to break the situation down into small, solvable parts. When you look at a mountain, it feels immovable, but when you break it down into steps, it becomes a path. Ask yourself, what's one thing I can do in the next 10 minutes that would make a positive difference? It might be a phone call, writing down your thoughts, stepping outside to change your environment, or simply drinking a glass of water. These small actions aren't trivial. They're momentum, and momentum reduces anxiety. People often talk about the importance of mindset, but mindset is not something you magically have. It's something you develop through practice. When life feels unstable, people with a calm mindset aren't ignoring the chaos, they're choosing not to feed it. It's not about pretending bad things don't happen. It's about refusing to let your identity be shaped by fear. You are not your situation. You are not your worst day. You are not the chaos surrounding you. You are the one who gets to decide how to move through it. And that leads to another essential principle. Calm is a discipline. It's not a personality trait. It's not reserved for the naturally mellow or emotionally distant. Calm is a skill, and like any skill, it can be developed. The more you choose calm in small, everyday situations, the more equipped you'll be to access it in high-stakes moments. The person who learns to stay centered in traffic, in meetings, in conversations that trigger them, that's the person who will stay calm when the stakes are much higher. It also helps to externalize the chaos. When everything stays inside your head, it becomes tangled, exaggerated, and emotional. But when you write it down, speak it out loud, or talk it through with someone you trust, it loses some of its grip. The goal is not to vent endlessly, but to process strategically and honestly. When you bring structure to your thoughts lose their power to control you. Then there's the environment. What surrounds you shapes you. If your space is full of noise, clutter, or panic from others, it's harder to remain grounded. Be intentional about your input. What you read, watch, and listen to matters. If the news cycle is feeding your anxiety, shut it off. If your conversations are fueling fear, redirect them. You can't always control who walks into your life, but you can control who has a seat at your table. Curate your environment the same way you would curate your workspace. Remove what distracts you and keep what centers you. And finally, understand that calm is not the absence of emotion. It's the presence of perspective. To be calm is to zoom out. It's to recognize that this moment, however intense, is part of a bigger picture. It's to remember that you've faced hard things before and made it through. It's to know that even if the outcome isn't perfect, you are still capable of handling it. Fear shrinks your world, but calm opens it up again. Calm says, I don't need to control everything to be okay. Calm says, I can take the next step without knowing the final outcome. Calm says, I am still here, and that's enough to begin. In moments of pressure, when life seems unpredictable and everything feels like it's moving faster than we can handle, people often search for techniques, ways to stay calm, methods to cope, strategies to endure. And while those are useful, they are incomplete without something deeper, purpose. The people who remain steady under pressure, who don't fall apart when plans fail or when uncertainty arrives, are not necessarily the most experienced, the most skilled, or the most intelligent. They are the ones who are most anchored, and the anchor is always purpose. Purpose gives weight to our presence. It roots us when emotions want to carry us away. It holds us steady when circumstances change. People who are deeply connected to why they do what they do are harder to shake, because their motivation doesn't rise and fall with the chaos of the moment. It comes from something bigger, something consistent, something that doesn't shift when the environment does. Think about the leaders you admire, not the ones who just hold titles, but the ones who make people feel safe in unstable times, the ones who walk into a crisis and seem to slow everything down. They don't have all the answers, but they radiate a certain kind of presence. That presence comes from conviction, and conviction is born from clarity. When you know your why, panic becomes optional. Purpose acts as a filter. It helps you separate what matters from what doesn't. When everything around you is competing for your attention, emails, opinions, deadlines, fears, purpose quietly prioritizes. It reminds you what to respond to and what to release. Without it, you react to everything. With it, you respond to the right things. When purpose is clear, decisions become simpler. They may still be hard, but they're no longer confusing. And purpose is not just a grand mission statement you hang on a wall. It's the daily alignment with the values you refuse to abandon, even under pressure. It's waking up and knowing that what you're building, who you're serving, how you're showing up, that all of it is connected to something bigger than ego, comfort, or temporary wins. When your work is driven by meaning, setbacks don't shake you as much. They still hurt, but they don't define you. You're able to absorb the shock because your identity isn't wrapped up in the outcome, it's rooted in the reason. This is also true in personal life. A parent stays calm not because parenting is easy, but because they're clear on why they're showing up for their child. A nurse remains composed in a chaotic emergency room, not because stress doesn't exist, but because they know who they are helping and why they chose this profession. When the why is clear, the how becomes bearable, even in the storm. When you know why you're doing something, it also gives you endurance. Many people burn out, not because they're doing too much, but because they've lost touch with the meaning behind it. Work becomes a list of tasks. Relationships become obligations. Life starts to feel like survival instead of intention. But when you reconnect to purpose, energy returns, focus sharpens, discouragement fades, not because everything is easy now, but because you've remembered what's worth fighting for. Purpose also reframes failure. Instead of seeing failure as an identity, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, you begin to see it as feedback. Purpose tells you that every setback is part of the journey, not the end of it. You learn from the loss, not crumble under it. You adjust course, not abandon ship. A strong why doesn't make you immune to failure, it just makes you resilient in the face of it. And perhaps one of the most powerful aspects of purpose is that it invites others to trust you. When people see that you're not driven by ego, panic, or fear, but by values, mission, and a deep sense of meaning, they feel safer around you. In uncertain times, people don't follow titles, they follow clarity. And clarity comes from purpose. When you lead from a strong internal compass, you create stability for everyone around you, even when the ground feels unstable. This is not about pretending to be fearless. It's about having something more important than fear. Fear may visit, but it doesn't get to lead. And when your life, your work, your relationships are aligned with something meaningful, fear loses its grip. You're no longer making decisions based on emotion alone. You're choosing based on vision, and vision has gravity. It holds you steady. Purpose doesn't mean you always feel confident, but it does mean you can keep going even when confidence wavers. It's the reminder that there's something worth moving toward, even when the way isn't clear. It's the conviction that your effort, your time, your presence, none of it is wasted when it's poured into something that matters. And that awareness creates a different kind of calm, not the kind that comes from escaping problems, but the kind that grows from facing them with something deeper than fear. Trust is not something you build when the storm hits. It's something you establish long before the first cloud forms. The people who stay calm and unshakable in moments of crisis are often the ones who have been intentional about building trust, not just in others, but also within themselves. They've invested in relationships, in communication, in clarity. They've created an environment where people feel safe to speak, safe to act, and safe to make mistakes. When trust is already present, it becomes a buffer against panic. It becomes the bridge that carries people through uncertainty without collapsing under pressure. When things fall apart, people don't instinctively look for the smartest person in the room. They look for the one they trust. That's because trust provides something intelligence alone cannot: emotional safety. It allows people to take risks, to be honest, to stay engaged. In high-pressure situations, a lack of trust becomes a second crisis. But when trust is already in place, people can face uncertainty with confidence in each other, even if the path forward isn't clear. Calm doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes from knowing that the people around you are with you, not just when things are good, but especially when they're not. Trust isn't just built through success, it's forged in consistency. It's showing up on time, doing what you say you'll do, following through even when no one's watching. It's listening with intention, being honest when things are hard, and admitting when you're wrong. These small, repeated actions create a foundation that holds under pressure. If people don't trust you during ordinary days, they won't trust you in extraordinary circumstances. And if you don't trust yourself to handle difficulty, you'll panic the moment things go sideways. You can't build a sturdy structure during an earthquake. You build it ahead of time with steel beams and careful design. The same is true of trust. You build it in calm moments by having the hard conversations, clarifying expectations, and creating a culture, whether in your home, your team, or your organization, where people know they can count on each other. That culture becomes your strength when everything else feels unstable. It becomes the reason you don't crumble under pressure. And trust isn't just external, it's internal too. You have to learn to trust yourself. That doesn't mean believing you'll never fail, it means believing that when you do, you'll learn, recover, and adapt. Self-trust is the quiet confidence that says, no matter what happens, I'll find a way forward. People who panic often haven't practiced that belief. They're still unsure of their capacity, unsure if they can handle the weight of responsibility, unsure if they'll rise under pressure. But those who've built self-trust don't need to pretend they're perfect. They've simply proven to themselves over time that they can face difficulty and come out stronger. This kind of self-trust is built the same way relational trust is, through small, consistent actions. keeping promises to yourself, showing up for your responsibilities even when motivation is low, reflecting honestly on your mistakes and making different choices next time. The more you do these things, the more reliable you become to yourself. And that reliability breeds calm, because when you trust your own integrity, your own resilience, your own judgment, you don't need to scramble when life surprises you. You meet the moment with a grounded presence. Trust also influences how we receive information. In a high-trust environment, people don't assume the worst when someone makes a mistake. They look for understanding. They're more generous with their interpretations. And that generosity keeps the temperature down. It creates space for collaboration, for forgiveness, for quick recovery. But in low-trust environments, everything becomes a potential threat. Every piece of feedback feels like an attack. Every delay feels like betrayal. And that kind of atmosphere makes calm almost impossible. If your goal is to be unshakable when life gets hard, you must start by cultivating trust now. Ask yourself, who do I trust deeply? Who trusts me? What can I do today to strengthen that trust? Are there unresolved conversations I need to have? Are there behaviors I need to change to become more trustworthy? These are not small questions. They are the foundation for how you will handle pressure tomorrow. Because when the heat turns up, you don't rise to the occasion. You fall to the level of your preparation, and trust is one of the most vital preparations you can make. Trust also has a unique ability to carry others. In crisis, not everyone will have clarity. Not everyone will feel confident, but your steadiness can become their source of strength. When people trust you, they'll borrow your calm until they find their own. And that's what true leadership is. It's not just being calm for yourself, it's creating an environment where others can find their calm too, where panic doesn't get to lead the room, where fear doesn't make the decisions, where people look to you and remember what stability feels like. You don't need to be loud to be trusted. You just need to be consistent. You don't need to know everything. You just need to be honest. You don't need to control people. You just need to care about them deeply. Trust isn't built through perfection. It's built through presence, humility, and follow through. And when the storm finally comes, it's trust, not fear, that becomes your greatest ally. There is a critical difference between reacting and responding, and it's a difference that often determines whether we bring peace or chaos into a situation. Reactions are fast, emotional, often automatic. They come from a place of survival. Raw instinct, heightened nerves, fear, anger, or defensiveness. Responses, on the other hand, are thoughtful. They require a pause, a breath, a moment of clarity to choose intention over impulse. Those who remain calm and unshakable in difficult circumstances have developed the discipline of responding rather than reacting. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about choosing not to be ruled by it. Every difficult moment comes with a trigger. Maybe someone says something that hits a nerve. Maybe plans fall apart. Maybe news arrives that flips your world upside down. In those moments, your nervous system kicks into high gear. Your heart races, your thoughts spiral, and if you're not practiced in the art of the pause, you will react. You'll say something you regret. You'll make a decision rooted in fear. You'll defend, attack, avoid, or retreat. And later, when the dust settles, you'll wish you had taken a second longer. That space between stimulus and response is small, but it is powerful. In that space is your ability to remain grounded, to choose your words carefully, to remember your values, to ask, what kind of person do I want to be in this moment? It may only be a few seconds, but those seconds shape the direction of your entire day, sometimes even your relationships, your decisions, your leadership. People who respond rather than react understand that calm is not weakness. It is control. Control not over others, but over self. The difference begins with self-awareness. If you don't know what triggers you, you won't know when you're reacting. You'll think the situation is causing your response, when really it's your interpretation of the situation. Someone criticizes you and you react with defensiveness. But if you're aware that criticism tends to hit a deep place inside you, perhaps a past wound or a fear of inadequacy, you can begin to slow down the moment. You can notice the emotion rising and say to yourself, "This is not an emergency. I don't need to defend myself right now. I can listen. I can stay curious." That shift doesn't happen by accident. It happens by intention. People who stay calm have practiced reframing. They've learned to look at pressure differently. Instead of thinking, "This is too much," they say, "This is an opportunity to grow." Instead of saying, "Why is this happening to me?" they ask, "What can I learn here?" They don't pretend the moment isn't hard. They just don't give the moment permission to define who they are. That mindset creates a kind of internal freedom. And from that freedom comes the ability to respond with integrity. Another powerful aspect of responding is that it allows you to stay aligned with your values even when others are not. If someone comes at you with anger, it's easy to match that energy. But when you respond instead of react, you refuse to be pulled into their chaos. You set the tone instead of matching it. That's where real strength lies, not in overpowering others, but in staying grounded in who you are, no matter how turbulent the environment becomes. This way of living doesn't come naturally. It's a discipline, something that's built through practice, especially in the small moments. The way you respond to a rude cashier, a missed deadline, a cancelled plan. Those are training grounds. Every moment of frustration is a chance to strengthen your ability to pause, breathe, and respond. And the more you practice in the small things, the more capable you become in the big ones. Over time, this habit becomes part of who you are. People begin to describe you differently, not as someone who avoids conflict or pretends things are fine, but as someone who brings clarity in confusion, calm in the storm. That reputation doesn't happen overnight. It's earned through thousands of micro decisions, moments when you could have snapped but didn't, when you could have escalated but chose peace, when you could have lashed out but instead leaned in with empathy. Responding over reacting also builds trust. People feel safer around someone who doesn't explode, who doesn't make rash decisions, who doesn't let their emotions run the show. That kind of presence makes you a steady force in unstable times. Whether in leadership, family, friendships, or crises, people gravitate towards someone who brings a composed, thoughtful presence. It's not about being emotionless. It's about being emotionally mature. Maturity says, "I feel this, but I won't let it lead me." Maturity says, "This matters, so I'll handle it with care." Maturity says, "I'll speak from wisdom, not from my wound." And the truth is, most regrets in life come not from things we calmly considered and chose, but from reactions. Moments when we let the heat of the moment take the wheel, the angry email, the hurtful words, the impulsive decision. But when you slow down, when you choose response, you create space for wisdom to enter. You give yourself a chance to do it better, to speak with grace, to lead with clarity, to love with intention. Practicing response over reaction isn't about perfection. You will still feel the heat of anger, the sting of disappointment, the ache of fear, but you'll learn not to let those emotions decide your next move. You'll learn to feel fully without being hijacked by the feeling. You'll learn to act in a way that builds peace instead of adds to the fire. And that kind of strength, quiet, intentional, disciplined, is what makes a person truly unshakable.